Now welcome to another lightning response video. This time we got a question from Darren Garut who asked, "Hey Thor, while you say making good Star Wars is easy and Disney not finishing and polishing scripts is definitely a hindrance, I'd argue it's a lot more difficult than you think. George Lucas did multiple drafts before he even started filming the first movie. Recently I've been in the process of editing a sci-fi fantasy novel that was heavily inspired by Star Wars, and during the initial drafting phase it became quite clear how difficult a genre sci-fi fantasy can be, and why so many after Lucas have failed. I'd recommend to all the fans to take a stab at writing a sci-fi fantasy story to really further your appreciation of the genre." Okay, so very quickly at the start here, I have to take the opportunity to plug my own work. I have written several Star Wars stories and posted them here on YouTube, and I just started a new one last week, and the second part should be up maybe in a week or two. I fell a little behind. My wife and I took a little mini vacation last weekend, so that got me way off schedule. Anyway, do please check out the first part. It's called Way of the Jedi. I will put a link to it in the comments and description below and all that good stuff, and tell me what you think. Anyway, personally, I find it, I don't want to say easy to write Star Wars, but I find it easier than other genres, or fantasy sci-fi to be easier than other genres. And I'm not trying to sound full of myself. I'm not the greatest writer ever. I'm just saying, personally, when I'm writing it, I like the fact that I can write something that is science fiction, but doesn't actually have to be very scientific, that I can lean more into fantasy and not have to get technical and explain how and why everything works the way it does. And the fact that Star Wars is already very well established. We have rules in the galaxy about how things work that, again, aren't very technical or scientific necessarily. I personally find it very easy to work in the Star Wars universe and to just follow the guidelines and rules and laws of physics, or whatever we want to call them, that have already been established by George Lucas and others on how this galaxy works. Now, it might be completely different if you're starting from scratch and trying to do your own thing, but personally, I don't find working in Star Wars to be very difficult. And again, I know I might sound completely full of myself. I'm not trying to. I'm just saying somebody else has done all the legwork, and I'm just carrying on and telling stories in a pre-established universe, which just makes it so much easier. All that said, and going back to the comment I made in a recent video where I said making Star Wars isn't all that hard, or making good Star Wars shouldn't be all that hard, and what I meant by that isn't that anybody could just sit down at a keyboard or typewriter or whatever it might be and just crank out a great Star Wars story. Rather, what I meant is that there are people out there that can and have done it before many times, and I'm not just talking George Lucas. I have read hundreds, literally hundreds of Star Wars books. I've also read thousands of Star Wars comics, and some of these writers, some of these authors just get Star Wars and can tell one hell of a story in that galaxy. Names like Timothy Zahn, James Luceno, Matthew Stover, Drew Karpyshyn, just to name a few, are some amazing authors that just know how to tell a Star Wars story. That just teleport you into the galaxy, and they're great writers, and it just all works, and you feel like, yeah, you're reading a Star Wars story. And so again, what I meant by that comment isn't that anybody can write Star Wars. It's that, yes, there are a lot of people who can. It's not like the only person who can ever get Star Wars right is George Lucas. Now, he is Star Wars to me. He's the guy who created it all and came up with it all. And again, like I said about myself, I'm taking what he has already established and running with it and telling my own stories and have all the parameters in place to tell a good story. He's certainly done the hard part and deserves a ton of credit. But it's not like he's the only one who can tell a good story in that galaxy. In fact, if we're just talking pure writing, I would say many others have written better Star Wars stories than George Lucas. Like I've said before, if there is a flaw with the prequel trilogy, it's that the writing isn't as good as it necessarily could have been. That if you would have had someone else come in there and touch up the scripts, maybe the prequels aren't disliked by a portion of the fan base. Because, yeah, there are prequel haters out there. As I've always said, I think there is a fantastic story in there. It's just not executed the best it possibly could have been. Anyway, what I'm saying here is that when Disney took over, they didn't exactly go out and try to find the best Star Wars writers they could possibly find, those who had tons and tons of experience. They went and found J.J. Abrams instead, and yes, Lawrence Kasdan did help write The Force Awakens, and he certainly has a pretty stellar track record when it comes to writing Star Wars, but he didn't even necessarily want to write the sequels from what I understand. He wanted to do the Solo movie, and the deal was, if he writes The Force Awakens, he can then do Solo. Either way, Rian Johnson came in and wrote the next movie in the sequel trilogy, and well, we all know what happened there. Johnson didn't seem all that interested in writing a Star Wars story. He felt like writing his own story that had some Star Wars vibes to it, I guess, and didn't feel like playing nice with what Abrams and Kasdan had done before with The Force Awakens, nor did he want to play nice with Colin Trevorrow. He wouldn't change his movie to fit what Colin Trevorrow wanted to do in Episode 9. Not that Trevorrow did Episode 9, but he was going to, and he wanted to use a Luke Skywalker, but Rian Johnson refused to allow Luke to live. But anyway, we also have the curious case of Tony Gilroy and Andor, and in my opinion, and the opinion of others, Andor is the best written Star Wars thing possibly ever. We could have a debate if Empire Strikes Back is technically written better or not, but they are two different things. One's a series, one's a movie. It's hard to compare them directly, but let's just say it is without question the best written Star Wars series, easily. And one of the greatest written series ever in any genre, in my opinion, again. Which to me proves that theoretically any outsider who is a good writer can come into Star Wars, and if they actually want to write a Star Wars story and not just do their own thing entirely, they can also tell a good Star Wars story. Now, yes, there are some who will say it's not really Star Wars, it's too different, it doesn't have enough of that feel, and I do get that. But all I'm really saying here is talented people exist who can get Star Wars right, who have a proven track record by writing novels. And I'm not necessarily saying they could just come in and write a script and it's the same thing. But I am saying these people could have or should have been brought in to consult. You could have brought in Timothy Zahn and tried to do a version of his sequels or of the Heir to the Empire series instead of just making brand new stories or a brand new sequel trilogy. That was certainly an option they had but chose not to take. You could have had him or some other renowned Star Wars author come in and just write essentially an outline or story and then have someone else come in and turn it into a screenplay. There's just so many ways they could have got Star Wars right. Again, there are plenty of talented people out there who could have done this. Instead, as I've said before, they seem to have this desire, or maybe it's Kennedy, maybe it's Iger, I don't know who it is, but they have this desire to bring in the who's hot now, to bring in the J.J. Abrams, or to bring in the Benioff and Weiss like they wanted to from Game of Thrones to do Star Wars, or to bring in Patty Jenkins because she made one good movie and everybody's talking about Wonder Woman, or to bring in Taika Waititi because he made Thor Ragnarok and everybody laughed at that and he's made some other good movies that people liked. That's one of the ways I think they have really gone wrong with Star Wars. Instead of looking for people who know Star Wars, who love Star Wars, who are passionate about it and want to tell great Star Wars stories, they just bring in the person who has a big name, a name that all the casuals and average viewers have heard of, and that's going to make them want to go see Star Wars instead of just the name Star Wars alone being what makes people, or used to make people, want to go see Star Wars. That's what I find so funny about the whole thing, their whole desire to bring in all these big names, which is something they're really starting to do again now, bringing in the likes of Ryan Gosling to star in a movie, to star in Starfighter, which I've got nothing against Ryan Gosling. I think he's a fantastic actor. But again, it seems like they're under this impression if we just bring in the right person, the right name will draw people, when the name Star Wars is what should draw people, or again, would have used to draw people. And that if you find people who can do those stories well, to do them right, that's what people want. They don't care who's in them, they don't care who's writing them. They just want good Star Wars. And there are people out there who have a proven track record, who have done it time and time again in novel form or comic book form. And those stories, yes, could have been translated to film by other people who wanted to do good Star Wars. But instead, that's not what we get. And that's essentially what I meant when I said that making Star Wars is not that hard. I didn't mean, again, that anybody can do it. I just meant that, yeah, there are people who can. They exist, and they weren't brought in to do it. Alright, well that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think. Is it hard to make Star Wars, or maybe not that hard? Maybe there are people out there who could have and would have gotten it right. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. Just start your comment off with "Hey Thor," ask your question. I try to answer it in a future video. But whatever the case may be, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.